But,
Okay.
I don't think you said no decisions were made.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did?
I don't know.
Hear it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so if we could spend just a couple of minutes talking about the salary survey itself and the recommendations, and you having the handouts on page 3. I just want to kind of walk through these real quickly and point to kind of the total impact, kind of the financial impact to be planning for, thinking about, considering. As you know, we did 3 things. We did the compensation and classification study, which is what we're going to talk about here this morning. The job descriptions have all been reviewed by department heads. We've taken their feedback and their input and made those final and conveyed those to the clerk in a very large email document. So those are ready, I think, after today's meeting to go back to department heads so that they can have their copies. They've all seen them, so they've been a part of that process with me. Then the employee handbook, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and Becky will be a part of. The department heads and you all have been a part of that as well. Let's talk a little bit about the compensation study. As you know, when we set the ranges for the minimum and maximum, we do that by surveying all those other counties, and we focus on counties similarly sized and situated to Cheyenne County, and that's important in terms of what the market is. After we collect that market data, then we look at what those ranges should be and what the percentage should be in terms of setting those new ranges and also the maximum ranges. And I can tell you overall that our recommendations, many of the ranges, because you really didn't have official ranges before, so those numbers look wider than maybe what department heads or you all would have been looking at before, and they go higher as well, so just in general. And that's okay. You're really kind of looking at the long term here. So moving people to the minimum of the range, the impact of that is the $29,347. That impacts 12 people in the county in terms of moving them to a range minimum. Again, as I said, had you all not made the adjustment in January, this number would be much bigger in terms of how many people would be affected. So kudos to the commissioners for taking action last January. And when we calculated part-time pay, we had to make an assumption that people were really part-time as in 50% time. And so I have a feeling that this impact number may drop because you have part-time employees that are really not at 1,040 hours a year. You have some that are much less. Okay, so that I believe will come down. Again, and the second recommendation that we want to discuss is moving people based on compression. So again, back to if we're both in the same position, and I've got 5 years of tenure. We want to make sure that we're allocating or moving people through the ranges based on their tenure or longevity in the position that we're talking about. So the impact there, this affects 17 people, and the impact there is $12,660 to move people through the range. So those are 2 numbers, and we know they look large. Again, they wouldn't be. You've already taken a major step, again, back to January with the 5% increase. So these are really kind of equalizing the rest of pay that needs to happen in terms of how to make that happen. I know we'll take some planning. We would suggest you make no change in your benefit package. This is something where you're competitive, you're drawing, this keeps people here, it's a retention factor. It's something that's a positive for the county. Fourth recommendation, and this will take a little more work, more of a discussion and dialogue, I think, with the fire department, especially with the fire chief and how many hours is being expended there. You don't want people contributing hours in a volunteer fashion completely. There are other issues to think about there as well, so you want to make sure that there's compensation. Also, in terms of the rate of pay when they're on scene, we found that there needs to be a slight adjustment there, and so we would recommend that you pay after 2 hours on the scene which maybe you knew about already, I'm not sure. So we've provided some data to you later in the report for that. So in total, there are 25 out of 55 employees that were recommending either an adjustment to meet the new proposed range or an adjustment to address compression. Not everybody got an adjustment upward, right? And you probably didn't expect that everyone would. However, you guys, again, with the steps that you've already taken, have really helped that process. I will stop and let you all, would you like additional information? Is this, you want to probably focus on the numbers, and so I'll just see if there are questions that you have.
I don't have any questions.
No, I think I'm satisfied with the data that you found. I think we need.
Well, and keep in mind, the purpose of this data in this report is not to be making decisions today regarding any sort of decisions about salary ranges, but this will be information that I think the board will need to consider once we get to the next step of this, which is getting job descriptions, setting clear expectations for our employees, and for the next year being clear about where we kind of want everyone to lie. So at this point, it's more just of a education, so that as we see job descriptions come in, you guys can start thinking about what your expectations are when we start formally adopting those.
So the ranges, thank you for kind of emphasizing that, are on page 7 and 8 of the report. Those are the new pay ranges with the proposed minimum and maximum, and then we've given you a range number to use for alignment as well. So we've given you their old information, old minimum and maximum. As I said before, you can see, for example, these ranges go higher. I wouldn't have really called what you had in place a range system. You had a partial step system in some ways that you would work on adjusting. The one way that you want to keep this up to date after you focus on implementation is we work with our clients every year to move these ranges so they don't get old or stagnant. And so we subscribe to a service that tells us exactly what rural counties should be adjusting their pay ranges to. And so that helps, it means it helps you not become stagnant or a rate of pay stays the same forever and ever, for example, for 5 years. So that's how we keep things up to date. What we also provided to you in the back are the charts, which I think you guys may have some interest in, and I'll just walk through one very quickly. There was some interest on Commissioner Radcliffe's part of knowing what Northwest Kansas specifically pays. We would have used just Northwest Kansas as your peer group, but we didn't quite have enough data. And so in many ways, the data that you have is much more inclusive because we have additional counties in western Kansas that are similarly sized.
So you're referring then back to page 8 here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So on page 15, this is just a sample, and mine's in gray, which means it's a little hard to read. And let me just walk through. Cheyenne County's rate of pay is right here in the third graph. So it would be the first bar chart. And so right here would be Cheyenne County. So you can kind of graphically walk through and see where those recommendations and changes are going to need to be made as well. And so we provided that for all the positions where we had comparable data, so you could see that information as well. And then we gave you the salary survey that we used with everyone. If you ever need to repeat it or do something, you'll have the methodology that we used and who we contacted, and so that's always helpful to counties as well. So that information went into the recommendations of the pay ranges and then into the adjustments of the 25 people that I mentioned just a few minutes ago.
Is that a public document that we can get copies of?
Yes, it is. You would make that request through the clerk.
Okay, just wanted to know.
Thank you.
This one wasn't one of the confidential reports?
This is not, this is
one is.
public.
Okay.
The other pieces that you have are confidential, so each commissioner knows the document and that is confidential. Right? Yes.
So 15, let's see. Oh, I see. You started alphabetically.
Quasi-alphabetically, I would say. Because
Okay.
I always catch myself like, quasi-alphabetically.
All right.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
yeah, these charts are,
They're helpful,
they are helpful.
yeah.
Uh,
And the clerk could give you a color copy. It's in PDF if you
Could
wanted
you
to
email
see
that out to all of us?
Maybe we could send it to each department head to,
Oh, yeah, I think
that'd be great.
that would be super helpful.
that way you guys know.
What's that?
Email it out to the department head?
Sure.
The confidential ones and that.
No, the confidential
No.
one cannot be, it's not an open record.
So again, 25 out of 55 employees are impacted by the recommendations that were made to move people either to the range minimum or make adjustments and move them through the pay range based on time and service and position.
It's interesting. Equipment operator's not that far off, but we're way off on road mechanic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
We wouldn't have went through and did what we did,
but
we'd be
these are
way
things
off.
that we can tweak internally.
Right. This was, as Nicole said, this is meant to guide things.
Yeah.
Now you have a structure. Now you have an actual salary survey
Yeah.
by an independent group, and sometimes that's what counties really want, rather than somebody bringing them internal data. About here's what is paid south or north of here, which north would be the wrong direction at the moment. By the way, we did not include Nebraska and Colorado. We considered those entities, but the taxing structure is so different that
Yeah.
even though you are in the most northwest corner, it just made it difficult because of the tax structure more than anything, and the way they organize county government. As Deb knows, the county clerk is not the county clerk. In Colorado, they have different functions.
We adjusted
Yes.
this pay last meeting, which was effective this entire month,
Mhm.
by 5%.
Mhm.
So that should probably bring that
No,
up.
this is up to date.
Oh, this is up,
Yes.
that includes the
Yes.
5%.
Yes, thank you for asking.
Okay.
We did make that adjustment. Deb called me to
Okay.
let me know that.
I want a clarification on that.
I knew he said.
Commissioner, let me just also say, you want to be, and maybe this is a good time to clarify things. You want to be between the ranges, obviously. You don't want to be
Right.
so far under or so
Right,
far over.
right,
So
right.
you're in good shape.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that graph was adjusted, but I will double check and actually communicate that back to Deb. I know that the chart and the table I handed you is accurate. Okay, shall we talk about the handbook, or, okay, we need to give Becky a call? Or should we do a different process, like comments or questions on this?
We can ask, does anybody have a question?
I just have a quick question about it. Did we do any longevity for fire and EMS?
I'm sorry?
Did we do any longevity for fire and EMS?
If we had them on the payroll, then we did count years of service.
Okay,
Yes, in
so
position.
even for those
Um,
volunteers or part-timers, whatever we're gonna call them?
Fire's a good question, yeah. EMS was on, we might need to look at that again. We did do part-time employees in general, so.
Thank you.
It's better to ask than know, Ryan?
I was just curious, like, those positions that are kind of unique for the county, how does that play a role in these?
These are emergency managers,
The
so
one-
it's,
So those that are kind of unique, how does that play a role in the study?
I know, what do you mean specifically?
well, we
Like,
let
how do
Attorney County
you find
agree
those
with
Right.
things that have that unique positions? I mean, we have some positions that are kind of unique, so how does that?
Good question, because Ryan is probably the most unique person with many different counties. What we did is, and I can use this as a good example. Remember when I interviewed everyone and we did a compensable factor? We scored people based on their decision making. So where we didn't have good matches, Ryan, I think you know what I'm saying. We relied on the point factor system, and there were only one or two positions where that had to happen. This was one of them, in a positive way, Ryan. I will say that because when we look at emergency management pay, in some localities it's not as high. And in other situations, for example, in your case, because it is 3 counties, we went with how much decision-making, budget responsibility, employees. So that's how you correct for kind of data that may not be good comparisons. I hope I answered that.
You did.
I have a question.
Yes.
Those positions you sent me, and I didn't think about this until late last night, so I apologize. When those proposals, does that include other proposals like the shift differential or anything like that? Are they included in those ranges that you sent me?
Shift differential, no. And typically we survey organizations for if they're paying a shift differential. Honestly, we find in rural areas that they're not paying a shift differential. And perhaps you already know that.
Yeah.
Which can be unfortunate sometimes. We only find shift differentials coming into play in more urban areas. And that would be the SMSAs for Kansas, unfortunately. But we've looked and we've tried to peel that onion open to find out who's paying shift differentials and they're not paying in rural areas.
we're ready to proceed.
Okay. Do you have that phone that we can call Becky on, a speakerphone?
We were to call Pam Meadows at 10:30. Are you going to do Becky first?
She's expecting 11, so if you want me to step back and you take care of that
I was
business.
going to say, when is Becky expecting?
11.
At 11.
So between you guys can do
Thank you for the cushion here. This is awesome.
If you will.
There's not one back here though.
9 on the phone to do a conference call
I see. There's electric.
to get out. And a 1
sweat.
620
620.
620.
255 5402
302
02.
02.
5402.
It's ringing. Now, where do we go to speak?
On speakerphone at the bottom.
Hands free?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hello.
Pam. Hey, hi, this is Deb. You are in the commissioner room with the Board of Commission, and we're trying to get you on speakerphone here. Your hands-free is not working. I might have to have girls call you and transfer it in here. Because it isn't. Your
I
hands.
think you have to hang it up though to do that, don't you? Hit hands free and
Are you still there? Pam, are you still there? No, she's not. So,
You push hands free now, will you get a dial tone?
And it's not working.
It isn't working. This
You switch
antiquated
out the phone.
system is not working.
Well, we should
Let me go get you a phone.
bias.
Either that or we can do it on, we can do it on my cell phone.
Is your speaker loud enough?
It should be. 620-255-5402. Yeah, let's see.
Hi, Pam. We're back on a speakerphone, on a cell phone, so I'll kind of set this in the middle of the room so everybody can sort of hear, so you can answer any questions that the Board of Commission might have. Can you
Morning.
increase this, or make the volume? That's it? Okay. Okay, go ahead, Pam.
Do any of you have any questions about the Time Clock Plus mobile apps?
Time clock plus mobile apps.
No, I don't.
You, at the last meeting, you had requested more information on the mobile apps, so I scheduled Pam for a conference call with you guys. She could not be here today. She sent me a proposal for 1 to 20 apps, and it's $799, just as was reported last time. So if you as a board have any questions on how the application works or getting it set up, now would be the time to ask.
See,
Yeah, we would just need to know how, what system it is to get this going. We want to eliminate a landline phone there at the landfill and also at the Bird City County shop.
And just general, how it implements and how it's used in other counties.
Pam, are you hearing that?
I didn't quite catch it all. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
Identify yourself, Dave, was your question, and let her answer one question at a time.
My question was, we was wanting to eliminate the landline phone and then we would just have a cell phone in the place at the landfill and Bird City shop. And we was going to go and incorporate this Time Clock Plus with that. Can you explain how we're going to implement this?
Yes. Basically, the landline is the phone, I guess, at the landfill now, and eliminating that cost and that environment out there is probably not the best for a PC to be in. I mean, most landfills aren't the best environment for computer equipment. However, a smartphone with a mobile app would allow them to clock in and clock out, punching their time, and also have them have the ability to have a phone available to them in place of that landline should there be an emergency or something. So that's, the earlier discussion I had with one gentleman from Cheyenne County about that. The Time Clock mobile app on the phone does keep track of the GPS point where they were at the moment they clocked. So you could actually tell in the punch whether they were physically at the landfill or not. Okay? Or the phone was.
Okay.
And then my question is, from an IT perspective, is there anything that our IT person needs to know to help support that or to install that or manage that?
Yes, what happens with the mobile app is that each one of the phones, you would have to know which phone it is, and there's security rights to come through to allow that phone to, through a firewall basically, to punch to that database. So it's phone specific.
And would it be recommended that it only be on a county-owned phone, or should it ever be installed on a personal phone?
I've seen it both ways, and it's basically the choice of the county and their policies.
And then in other counties, is it used by people who are traveling, you know, that they can mobilely clock in and out as they travel?
Most of them are individuals who do not have a desk type job or an environment where they can go in the morning and punch in and out, and they are the more mobile people in the county that I have seen we do this with.
Right, and we have our emergency management groups, our emergency services group. They do a lot of responding from the point of their home out to a scene. So I was just curious if that would be an appropriate use of that.
It probably would. I mean, it's still, guys, it's always going to come back to what you choose, but in those scenarios, the emergency people need to respond to the emergency and punch that clock at some point later. I mean, you don't want to get keeping time in front of the emergency. That's not wise at all.
And I know this is a county attorney. The license we're talking about is up to 20 apps installed, correct?
Right.
And how easy or difficult is it to, you know, switch between phones? So, you know, let's say at one point we have 10 phones that we've decided to allow to use the app, and then we want to take 2 of those phones away and add another 5. What's the process? How difficult or easy is that?
It's not a difficult process at all. I mean, within 10 to 15 minutes, you can probably change those over.
So they're transferable.
The mobile app itself is a download from the App Store, and it's a free download that comes, the software gets down to the phone, and then there's a communication that lets that phone come to the database, and that's the part that the county would allow, is that person to punch with that phone, okay?
But they can also punch in on their computer. They don't have to punch in on a daily basis, only like emergency situations. They can still use their computer to clock in as well, even though...
Can, if someone had a mobile app, but they also had a computer, you could punch from either place. It would know where you were on the computer by the IP address, or it would know if you were on the phone by the GPS point. So inside of the punch, we know where that call or that timestamp came from.
Good.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, that was very helpful.
Pam, this is Cody Beeson, the sheriff. I have a real quick question to make sure I'm right. On this, when we talk about mobile, we have our data in our vehicle, mobile stuff that uses the hotspot off the phone. I was initially thinking of putting it on that in the vehicle, so they clocked in their vehicle on that mobile computing system. Is it just better to use the phone rather than that?
You know, I'm like, is your mobile vehicle, is it something like a tablet?
Yes.
I need to check with that specifically. I have not used a tablet, but I think the same applies with that mobile app.
Because
I need to check, okay?
Because even in an emergency, and a deputy gets in there, he's got his logger, and he hits the log when he leaves. It's not going to be any more for him to turn around, move that screen to the side, and go to his time clock plus and clock in. I mean, he's going to have to manipulate that screen anyways before he leaves to go to something, or even when he comes to work, because they clock in at their house as soon as they back their patrol vehicle out of the driveway. They're at work. But I mean, we can always fall back to the phone. That's not a problem. I just was wondering. That's kind of a gray area in
I believe
between.
either way would work because the whole application is web-based, you know?
Yeah.
And so that tablet is basically a mobile computer. The world really doesn't know any different about it, you know? So it wouldn't be any different than any other computer coming to that database. So
Like I said, I think.
Either one would work for you.
Okay. I just want to make sure we go the best route for the best bang for our money. I didn't want to buy an app if it could be done the other way, but that's.
The thing about the apps are sold in groups of 1 to 20, and then I think there's a next group like 1 to 50 or something like that. They don't just do it for one. I wish they would, you know, they just don't. And that $799 is a one-time charge. So your license license for 20 mobile devices at one time. So if one comes on and, you know, somebody uses the phone for a while and then they leave, somebody else can use that same license again. It's 20 at one time. Okay?
All right, well, that was my biggest, you answered my biggest question, is it's workable either way. That's my biggest thing, and we'll decide which way works best for us. So, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
So for instance, Joe Blow comes to work, he's gonna punch in on a certain code number when he gets there? He's gonna call in a certain number?
It's your choice. I think most of the time what counties do is, unless you're doing any job costing. So if a person works in multiple positions, you might have them clock into, I'm a mechanic, I'm doing this job, I quit this job, and I go grade a road. Or are you just going to say, I'm a county laborer at the shop, I clock in, and I clock out. So those are your choices.
Part of that's going to be on how we set up our payroll
Most
system.
areas, most county employees click a green button that says clock in, and they enter their employee ID, which is usually 4 numbers, and then they're done. And clock out, they enter the push a red button and enter their 4 numbers, and then they're clocked out.
It will get sent to Deb through the payroll system.
The other thing I think the board needs to have discussion on is, do we clock in and out for lunch hours? And that was, I think that was one of the questions.
Breaks or other things that are, you know, that you guys need to discuss.
Right.
Because you get a little track when there's somebody clocked in and out, what time for a break or what time for lunch hour. And, or we can assume that they took a lunch hour and breaks during that time, and they just clock out when they arrive and when they leave. Those are options in the setup.
Pam, this is Reed Riley. I'm the EMS director, and I kind of have a question related to Dave's about people that wear multiple hats. So when you click the green button on that mobile app, or even on the website from the PC, do they have the option to select like who they are?
Yes, if you are an employee who wears multiple hats, and there are different jobs that you could clock into. So when you enter your employee ID to punch in, you will have options or a select spot to let you pick which one of those you're doing. You don't have to remember a bunch of numbers.
Okay, so, and we could also set it up so that it's piecemeal work and not just hourly or salary?
Mm-hmm. All the clock is doing is punching time. It's not worried about how you get paid. It's keeping track of the time you work or are at work.
But some of those hats aren't time-based, they're piecemeal-based. How would that work?
I think that's more of a tracking question.
The pay itself is a payroll function about whether the paying is salary or hourly and so forth. But the hours are needed in order to qualify and determine whether an employee should be offered insurance under the Affordable Care Act and so forth. And then there's compliance regulations about whether the county is reporting the Affordable Care Act. And so even on salaried employees, the Affordable Care Act applies. So we do need hours on salaried employees.
And I get that. What my question is, say we have an employee that clocks in at 8 o'clock and clocks out at 8:30. Well, they don't get paid an hourly wage for that. They get a flat rate of $50.
That's still in the payroll.
See, I think this is...
All we have is an hourly punch time, but the pay
So
has
you
to
would
be
have to
back
figure
to the
that out on
payroll
yours, right?
that they were salaried.
Well, it should be
They
set
just
up in
have
the software.
that many hours toward
No,
the salary.
here, I'm going to stop you. There's two separate areas here. We're talking punching time in and out, and then separate than that, we're going to have software for the actual payroll system. This is a part of that feeding data into payroll. Does that make sense?
So they probably wouldn't even clock in with this system. They would fill out something else so it goes into the payroll for that piecemeal
All
stuff.
time is going to be clocked either through a PC or through a mobile device. That data that is tracking time will then be a part of our payroll system, and that's where we pull the data from to be able to pay people. Does that make sense?
So that part of
But
the
in the
software's
system,
gonna
it's going to
say,
have an hourly rate for this employee, right?
Yeah.
How are we
Yes.
going to do
Yes.
piecemeal? Because it's not an hourly rate.
Well, it
Yes,
would be
is
the
what-
same as like salaried employees who get paid a certain amount.
You're talking about those employees that have one-time rates?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that-
yeah. Those one-time, those calls, the calls that we pay now at $50 a call. That might be
Are you
30
talking
minutes.
about-
That might be 2
talking about
hours.
volunteers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I
I
don't-
think,
I
Pam,
don't
you
think
had,
the system's set up for that, is it?
you had addressed that with me a little bit the other day when we spoke about the volunteer people, especially EMS and fire, that get paid a one-time pay, like fire, they get X amount of dollars for a call, or EMS gets so many dollars for a run.
They get paid per run, is that what you mean?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, we were gonna address that a little different than the employees that clock in and out.
All right, because, they are really not working hours, they're getting paid
Right.
for taking
And I feel
runs as
like
a
that's my
volunteer.
concern here is
Yes.
we're talking about time clock and then payroll. The
Yes.
payroll.
So we're
payroll-
good?
I think we're good.
I
Are we
think
good?
Yes.
Okay, as long as we're good.
Yeah.
Yes.
As we go forward, I think all of that will come. Yeah.
Those same employees are getting paid 50 cents.
Good question, so.
Any other questions? There's one thing I can tell you about the mobile device, is that on the mobile phones, and there's a locator that knows where the phone is at, and if you turn that off on the phone, it will not let you stamp. So what that means is that you can't really get around it not knowing where you are. So Charlie couldn't be on his couch and say, punch and say I'm at work. I mean, it would do that, but we know Charlie's not at the job site. Okay? So if he turns it off, saying, I'm over here trying to punch, it will not punch. If he's, so there's no really trying to get around where that phone's at. We know where the phone's at if we're taking an actual punch.
I'm just opposite Pam. I better see them clocking out the house, or I'm gonna ask questions.
there are legitimate reasons for walking that home.
Does the location? They had a person that traveled between two school districts, and this guy was always late getting to the other district. Well, he would punch in before he got to the first one. He would punch in, and they could prove that he was not there yet because of his GPS point. And then he would punch in at the next school district before he left that one. Well, all of that was traceable in the GPS points. Does that help you feel a little better about those mobile apps?
Dolores, did you have a question?
So does the location have to be left on all the time?
The location has to be on at the time they punch.
Only at the time of punch? Because I won't be using it, but I don't want my location on all the time either.
And it brings you better.
But I don't believe elected officials will not be clocking.
I'm not talking about me specifically because I know I won't be using the phone. I'm just asking a general question.
But you're asking that device to verify where I am when I punch, and so that locator needs to be on.
Okay.
Shut it off.
Okay, are there any other questions?
No.
Okay. Pam, I don't think we have any other questions. Did you have anything else to add?
No, but if you're getting weather, are you getting any rain out there?
A little bit.
Oh, it's nice to see it. It's pretty green out, so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for your time, and if you can come up with a different question, call me back. I'll be happy to help you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now, the one thing I want to bring up that I think the board needs to be thinking about, especially one, we need to be thinking about how many people actually need to use the phone, because ultimately we only have 20 licenses, and I know that seems like a lot, but I think we're going to be at our upper limits anyhow. And then also setting a policy on whether or not we only want it on county phones. Are we okay with it being on some personal phones, and identifying which sorts of positions that we would be comfortable with it being on a personal phone? Because my understanding of how it works is ultimately Deb's going to be identifying which phones can have the mobile app on them. So we might want to start doing some information gathering from department heads about who, how many mobile apps they think they need in their department, and whether or not it's going to be on a county issued phone or a personal phone. So maybe when you send out the Austin Peters report, maybe invite some data collection, because I think now would be a good time to start thinking about that as we're adopting policies.
And I do have a questionnaire that I printed for the board on how this software is to be set up. So with Beth here, some of those questions I think were answered. Well, you haven't actually adopted it yet. So, but this is information that I need to gather from this board so that I can get it back to CIC to get the software structured. But I told Pam these were the board's decisions that needed to be filled out.
Is Becky Crowder going to be?
Yes.
Agreed with.
Another thing that I was thinking about is if it's going to be location based, are we only going to allow our employees to work from the office? I think that's something that we need to address too. Well, like inclement weather and you're working at home type of thing, is that not going to be allowed? And that's probably more for a handbook.
Yeah, but I think part of that is a lot of the employees that are going to be in that situation anyhow are going to be exempt employees. Because something else to keep in mind here is we're in the process. We've never had formal policies about clocking in and out and who gets paid what. So some of these scenarios that I think you're posing are going to apply to employees that aren't going to have that issue, because I work from home at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, but none of this is going to apply to me because of my position. And I think a lot of what we're talking about is probably going to be employees that fall within that. Does that make sense?
It's going to be $7.99.
Well, I think the other issue is some of us
But
will
there's
have to
nothing.
clock in.
I know,
Like
but
if
I
you're on
think
call,
that's why we need to collect data from department heads about how many people will be in a situation where they are going to have to clock in and out. Because the fact is, mostly everyone in this courthouse is not going to clock in and out of a phone. These are going to be emergency services, some public works people. So I think we're getting closer there. We just need a little more data collection before we make final decisions.
Okay, you want a motion on
One
this?
quick question.
I'll make a motion
Wait,
that
wait,
we...
wait, Rodney, there's another question.
That's okay. I wanted to clarify, because I think in the past discussions, it was said that the supervisors do have control before that actually goes to payroll to look at it and to alter it, like I know the reason why I'm asking is I have an employee who's also a EMT, and her concern is she goes on call in the middle of the night. She's not going to wake up to log in. So how does that work for her?
That's part
So
of that.
would that be where the supervisor could go in and put that time in there, because he knows when they're signed
That comes
up
through
for-
the EMT pay. It doesn't come through the treasurer's pay.
I am fully aware of that.
Okay.
But yeah,
That's not my question.
middle of the night, what would we do? How would we handle that
Yeah,
scenario?
so, or if they go on a call and forget to log in or log out.
That goes back
Because
to
they
the per
can-
run pay.
Yes.
All I'm asking is, does the supervisor have the
Ultimately,
ability?
yes, the supervisor is going to approve everything before payroll, but that's not really the question you're asking right now. The question you're asking, I think, is a separate question regarding paying someone who is logging in and out and being paid per hour, and paying someone who's being paid per run. And that's a separate question from a supervisor being able to approve payroll before the clerk pays it out. And we are developing policies through our payroll system to address paying people whether or not they're hourly, salaried, or being paid per run.
Right, I understand that part.
Okay.
That's not quite your question, but I'm just asking, does the supervisor have control to alter it if it's not correct? If somebody forgot to log in and
Yes.
they were on the
Yes.
schedule to log in, they have the control to do that. That's all I'm
Yes.
asking.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and through this system too, when employees in your offices want to request a personal day or a vacation day, or they need sick leave for anything, they can log in under their password and request of the supervisor time out of the office. And supervisors have that authority to approve it or not approve it. So, and then at the end of the pay period, and as supervisors, you can do this on a daily basis of maintaining your department. You can do it on a weekly basis. You can do it once a month. And that's something.
That'll be good.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you
That'll
can
be
do
really
it.
good.
You can do it at your convenience.
Okay.
of
Kind of like what we do now, really.
Well, you know, we write it on a calendar now, and it really isn't approved or signed off on sometimes not. Oh, that thought went right over my head when I looked at you.
Way to go, Brett.
Way to go. But yes, supervisors have, oh, I know what it was the payroll period. I think needs to be discussed also in moving that date, through the end of April for those emergency services and 24-hour services. The date ends at midnight. And so 12/01, May the 1st, starts another day. So that pay period, we need to have some discussion on adjusting that pay period. So maybe we'll be paying mid-month rather than the end of the month. However you wish to address that.
I would really kind of like to see it go bi-monthly, if that can be possible. We talked about that for years, and just the way our system has been set up and worked, we just never have done that. But I would like the employees, maybe that be part of your question, that you send out with us.
Because the other thing to keep in mind is the way our payroll system has been working is, one, people have just been submitting written calendars, but two, you know, they're submitting their hours worked before the pay period is even done, which I think is not only problematic for the clerk, but it puts employees and their supervisors in awful positions where something could pop up afterwards, or, you know, maybe they have a family emergency and they said they were going to work this amount of time and they didn't. So I think that's the other thing we need to consider in our adopting our policies and considering from now on. I mean, I think from a fraud perspective, you know, asking employees to submit a time where, like, you know, the day's done before they submit their time is going to be better for the employee, better for their supervisor, and better for payroll. Which I think this system will make that process way easier.
I believe it will.
Even every 2 weeks instead of twice a month, because you get into that some months are longer than others. And
Well, the other thing that concerns me is when you start changing pay dates and that. I mean, it may not be true for all, but for a lot of employees, there's a 2-week lag in pay that can be huge for some. I mean, the first time it gets changed.
Well, and that's part of the information that needs to go out, is so that everybody is aware of
Yeah, because they have automatic payments.
if those need to be adjusted, you know, it gives employees time to do that.
I think what Ryan's saying is, for some people, it's that first time it's going to be hard going 6 weeks without being paid instead of 4. You know,
One way that,
I was like, most people, you know, get towards the end of the month, now you got another 2 weeks on top of that.
a lot of people live in paycheck to paycheck.
They do.
Pay 2 weeks.
One way that I've seen that addressed, and I've been through it twice,
Do
is
the review.
the board would have to
Time and accounts payable.
essentially give you a 2-week pay period in there and just prorate it out for the rest of the year. So you basically didn't see that change. It's just something that I've seen done in the past.
I think there's some creative solutions.
Yeah.
Or if you go to the every 2 week, it's not going to be the whole
Right.
impact of
I mean,
that.
ultimately, I think the 2-week pay period would be the best answer.
Well, we need to definitely look into that then, because we don't want any of the employees put out because of this, so all your questions are, we'll take it, so. Is there any other questions as far as that goes?
I know that I'm repeating a lot of what's been said by emergency services a lot, but I know these are details we can work on later, but that midnight thing, when you have an employee, because 24 hours a day, I at least have one employee on. So that midnight, the rest of that shift goes in the next pay period, right? I just want to make that clear. It doesn't stay with that. There's no magic thing in the software that's going to keep them on until 7 a.m. and then put it back to that month. It'll start a new pay period with that. Okay, that's as we're designing shifts and schedules, I want to make sure with that. So.
And something I want to keep in mind, because I keep picking this up from employees. We are not, we're in the preliminary process. Even with the employee policy handbook, where we'll be talking to Becky on the phone, none of this is formal. We are still in early draft phases. And I think the fact that we're so detailed in our early draft phases is a very good sign. But I just want to set reasonable expectations, because I know I've kind of heard chattering that makes it sound like some of this stuff in the employee policy handbook that was distributed to department heads is like final and that's the end of it. We're not to that process. This is still a work in process, not only from the employee policy handbook, but in developing a new way to handle payroll. So I just kind of want to set that out there, that we are nowhere near being anywhere near actually adopting formal policies or changing job descriptions or adopting new salary ranges. We're still in the preliminary phases to get all the information you need to be able to make that decision.
But the department is able to review that so they think it's formal.
I mean, part of that is just, it's going to depend on what the board wants, and as we start to get more drafts from Austin Peters. I mean, I will say, I think the board's aware of this, but the department heads were fabulous on providing feedback. I got numerous people responded early or sat down and meet with me and had a list of 20 to 40 items to discuss, and they were helpful, on the ground advice that we needed to actually consider in drafting our policy. But with that, I think probably giving Becky a call would be helpful.
I think the feedback is needed before we make it final. I think that's great. So voice your opinion.
Well, and ultimately, I mean, and this will be up to the board. My thought process was we go through another couple drafts, have the board look at that, and probably share it with department heads one more time before we get to the point where we formally adopt it. But I mean, the further we get into the drafts, the less changes we're going to be making, obviously, hopefully at that point.
Okay. Are there any other questions as far as that goes? If not, we move on.
I would like a motion on that.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we purchase the Time Clock Plus mobile apps software in the amount of $799.
That covers 20 phones. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
What's on? What's wrong, Becca?
Do we know we just need one?
Well,
Will they prorate it if we decide we need 35 or whatever?
No, it doesn't matter whether you have one phone or 20 phones. It's $799. If you go over that, it's a different rate. So I think that's what.
It's kind of a trial and error period. We'll see where we're at, and if we need to adjust, we probably will have to. So.
But we're not going to get hit twice then if we have to adjust, I guess is my point.
That I don't know. That's a good question.
What's the rate of 1 to 50, I guess?
It's 1 to 27.99 in the store.
Right.
21 to 50 or 40, I don't remember.
Another.
And if
I don't remember if it was $7.99 or if it was $6.99.
well, and
Okay,
I
so
think
we're
the thing is, the board had indicated before that they wanted to do the 1 to 20 to start with.
Right.
And then, but that's why I was saying, I think, one, just for Ted to be able to make decisions, but for information gathering.
For some reason, they don't offer one license.
And also, it's the board's decision as to which applications, which phones need to give out. And that's the feedback that I need from you guys, is how many phones that you need in your departments to get this set up.
Okay. Because my phone, we're only going to have 2 phones. So the sheriff's gonna have 5 or 6 or whatever.
But if you have, like, clerk's department, for example, the employees in the clerk's department, we come to work and we log in on our phone, so we don't need it.
That's what I'm getting at.
But it's gonna be mostly emergency services personnel, even dispatch, you know, when those employees come to work, they log into their computer. That's the first thing you do when you come to work is turn it on. So, would you sign off on that if it is approved, please? And I'll send that on.
We're ready, Dolores. I'm sorry.
Beth, do you recommend the department head stay for this next session or not?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry.
You have to dial 9 to get out.
Oh, you have to dial 9 to get out. A 9 and then a 1. Just pick.
Oh, that sounds so long.
To increase the speed, just hit, or speed, volume. Yeah.
Good morning, this is Becky.
Hey Becky, it's Beth, and I'm here with the county commissioners and Nicole and Deb, and the department heads are with us as well.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, how about do you care if I start?
That's fine.
Okay. So as Nicole said, there's been a lot of back and forth, and we've had a lot of feedback and input, and she's taken a lot of input. Maybe walking through some of the highlights here or decisions that still are yet to be made. Is that how you see proceeding, Becky?
Yeah, so I sent along a letter, a memo,
Which they all have.
and the changes were unresolved issues.
I got one of them somewhere.
Okay. I think we're ready.
Maybe if we start with that and then go on to questions or other items that people feel be unresolved yet. So the first item on my memo, of course, the handbook is the county commissioner's opportunity to provide direction and guidance and policy and how all employees are treated. The first question here on the list is, does the county want to
You might need to shake that.
Okay. Hey, Becky.
You gotta do something.
Okay.
Gotta
Ms.
handle.
Foster. Can you hear me?
No, she's there, but it's a speaker on Pick it up. I know she's
IT,
there.
you're still on.
Go up there and shake it.
We have a little technical issue. IT, get up here and help them. Are you there?
here?
There you are. Okay, so back to item number 1.
She's flashing. I know.
I think it's because it seems like when it shifts around, like it disconnects them.
Yeah, that's what
I don't think it's the phone, because she's saying connected.
Do you want to go there?
Becky, are you still there?
We can do my phone again.
Here,
Unless your phone's louder.
it might be.
These office phones have hands-free.
Yeah, that's junk.
If you guys want to take a break, we can run up and get our speakerphone from
We've got one that'll work.
We've got one that'll
Okay,
be
let's
very
take a
good.
quick break and let them get their speakerphone.
Thank you.
That way everybody can
Don't
hear.
forget the bass.
Yep.
And the power.
Maybe you just sell them yours or
What?
sell them yours or
I like ours. It allows us to connect to a cell phone too. We just, I'm gonna write a grant to get a proper speaker phone in here.
But if you go to SIP, make sure it's got SIP.
It's SIP capable.